Smoke curls thick in the Houston office where deals are made in shadow and silence. A photograph slides across the mahogany desk, face down at first, then revealed with deliberate slowness. The woman in the picture has eyes that refuse to apologize, dark hair pinned back from a face that has learned to hold secrets. The man receiving the photograph studies it without expression, his hands steady despite the weight of what is being asked. $5,000. Half now, half when it's done. The target is a singer who works in a cantina on the wrong side of San Antonio, a woman who witnessed something she should have kept her eyes closed to. The man with the photograph has done this work before, came back from the war with skills that translated poorly into peacetime and perfectly into this. He takes the money without ceremony and leaves through the back entrance where the alley cats know better than to make noise. The cantina called El Coyote Azul sits on a street where the pavement gives up and dirt takes over. Inside, soldiers fresh from victory and aching with what victory cost them drink away the hours between sunset and forgetting. The stage is small, lit by bulbs that flicker like hesitant stars, and when she walks into that pool of amber light, the room quiets in a way that has nothing to do with respect and everything to do with hunger. Her voice wraps around the Spanish lyrics of an old bolero, something about kissing and memory, and even the men who don't speak the language understand loss when they hear it sung with that much truth. The man who came to kill her sits at the bar with whiskey he doesn't drink, watching not just her but the room, the exits, the patterns of movement that will matter when the moment comes. He tells himself it's reconnaissance, that a professional does not rush, but part of him knows he is stalling against something he cannot name yet. After the last song fades and the applause dies into the clink of glasses, she descends from the stage and moves through the crowd with the practiced grace of someone who has learned to navigate desire without giving it permission to touch. A drunk soldier grabs her wrist, his grip too tight, his words slurred into demands that think they are compliments. Before the man at the bar can move, before his instinct to intervene can betray his purpose, she breaks a glass against the table edge and holds the jagged weapon steady at the soldier's throat. Her voice is calm, almost kind, as she tells him in 2 languages that he will let go or he will bleed. The bouncers arrive and remove the problem, and she sets the broken glass down with hands that do not shake. The man at the bar watches this and realizes the woman in the photograph is not who he thought she was, that courage has a way of complicating contracts written in cold rooms by cold men. The back door of the cantina opens onto an alley that smells like rain on hot asphalt and the faint sweetness of rotting fruit from the market next door. She steps out into the night with only a small purse and the weariness of someone who has sung her heart out for strangers and must do it again tomorrow. The man follows at a distance, his footsteps careful, his breathing controlled. He has done this enough times to know when the moment is right, when the street is empty enough, when the target is vulnerable enough. But tonight the moment refuses to arrive cleanly. A black sedan tears around the corner, tires shrieking, and 2 men leap out with guns already drawn. They are not subtle and they are not patient. They shout her full name like an accusation, like a sentencing, and the first shot shatters a window above her head. Instinct takes over where reason has no time to argue. The man who came to kill her instead pulls his own weapon and fires twice, not at her but at the men who are trying to steal his contract, his purpose, his $5,000 that suddenly feels like 30 pieces of silver burning a hole in his pocket. She runs without looking back, which is smart, and he runs after her, which is complicated. The 2 gunmen are down but not dead, yelling into radios, calling for backup that will arrive with the efficiency of men who are paid too well to fail. The streets twist and narrow, alleys becoming corridors of desperation, and she runs like someone who knows this neighborhood in her bones, every shortcut and every dead end. He follows because stopping means explaining to the men in the black sedan why he shot at them instead of at her, and that is a conversation that ends only one way. They duck into an abandoned warehouse where the roof has more holes than certainty and the floor is littered with the skeletons of furniture that factories left behind. Breathing hard, hearts hammering, they face each other across 10 feet of dust and broken promises. She pulls a knife from her boot, small but serious, and demands to know who he is and why he saved her. He does not have an answer that makes sense, so he tells her a partial truth, that the men chasing her are chasing him now too, that they need to leave the city before sunrise, that questions are expensive luxuries neither of them can afford. The truck he stole has seen better decades, its paint faded to a color that might have been blue once, its engine coughing like an old man climbing stairs. They drive west into the heart of Texas, where the land stretches flat and stubborn under a sky too big to argue with. She sits in the passenger seat with the knife still in her hand, not pointing it at him but not putting it away either. Silence fills the cab like a third passenger, uncomfortable and necessary. He focuses on the road, on the rearview mirror, on the gnawing certainty that the men who hired him will not forgive this betrayal, that he has burned a bridge he was standing on. She stares out at the passing landscape, at the mesquite trees and the barbed wire fences that divide nothing from nothing, and finally asks the question that has been building since the alley. Did they send you to kill me? He grips the steering wheel tighter, jaw clenched, and after a silence that costs him something, he nods once. She absorbs this without hysteria, without pleading, with the grim acceptance of someone who has always known that witnesses are liabilities and liabilities get erased. Then why didn't you, she asks, and he has no answer that does not sound like weakness or confusion or something worse, something that feels dangerously close to conscience waking from a long and ugly sleep. They stop at a roadside motel when exhaustion becomes a louder voice than caution. The neon sign flickers the word vacancy like a question no one wants to answer. 2 rooms would be safer, more professional, but money is finite and trust is not yet earned, so they take 1 room with 2 beds and a door that locks from the inside. She showers first, the sound of water a small mercy, and when she emerges with damp hair and borrowed resolve, he sees her without the stage makeup, without the armor of performance, and she is somehow more real and more dangerous to him in this unguarded moment. She sits on the edge of the far bed and tells him about her sister, 16 years old and dying slowly in an Austin hospital where tuberculosis wards smell like disinfectant and despair. She sings in that cantina, endures the grabbing hands and leering eyes, because the money keeps her sister alive 1 more week, 1 more month, 1 more breath. He listens without interrupting, understanding for the first time that the woman he was sent to kill is not a name on a contract but a sister, a survivor, a walking act of love that refuses to quit. His turn to speak comes harder, pulled from a place he keeps locked even from himself. He tells her about the war, about Normandy, about beaches that ran red and boys who became men by dying before they learned how. He tells her about his younger brother, who followed him into hell because brothers do that, who died 3 meters away in an explosion that left him untouched and destroyed. He tells her about coming home to a country that had moved on, to parades that felt like lies, to a silence inside himself where his brother's voice used to live. The jobs he takes now are not about the money, not really, though the money helps him pretend. They are about being useful in the only way he knows how, about serving a purpose even if that purpose is dark. She listens, and when he finishes, she does something unexpected. She reaches across the space between the beds and places her hand over his. Not pity, not forgiveness, just acknowledgement that pain recognizes pain and sometimes that is enough. Morning brings no easy answers but it brings coffee from a diner attached to the motel, weak and bitter and somehow perfect. They sit across from each other in a booth with cracked vinyl and study the map spread between them like a treaty neither fully trusts. He has a contact in Del Rio, a man who owes him a favor from the war, someone who can get them across the border into Mexico where the men in Houston have less reach. She worries about her sister, about the hospital bills that will go unpaid, about abandoning the only family she has left. He promises, though promises from a man like him should carry no weight, that once they are safe, once the heat dies down, he will find a way to get money to the hospital, to keep her sister cared for. She wants to believe him and that wanting is dangerous, the first crack in the wall she built to survive men who make promises they never intend to keep. They leave the diner as the sun climbs higher, and somewhere behind them in Houston, men are gathering in rooms like the one where this all started, plotting routes and making calls and sharpening the consequences of betrayal. The second day on the road is longer, hotter, the truck's air conditioning dead for years. They drive through small towns that look like sets from movies about better times, past fields where cattle stand stupid and patient in the heat, past gas stations where attendants stare too long at strangers. Twice they see vehicles that might be following, might be coincidence, and both times he takes turns that add miles but buy peace of mind. She notices things about him in the forced intimacy of the cab, the way he checks the mirrors in a pattern, the scar on his forearm that looks like shrapnel, the fact that he has not smiled once since they met. She tells him stories to fill the silence, about growing up along the border, about her father who worked the railroads and sang corridos on Saturday nights, about her mother who died when she was 12 and left her and her sister to figure out survival on their own. He listens more than he speaks, which she comes to understand is his way of caring, that listening is the only tenderness he has left to offer. Trouble finds them at a roadblock they do not expect, a makeshift checkpoint on a road that should be empty. 2 cars parked across the asphalt, men standing with rifles that catch the afternoon light. He recognizes the setup immediately, knows these are not police, knows the men in Houston have reached longer than he gave them credit for. He reverses hard, tires screaming, dirt kicking up in plumes, and the chase begins with the inevitability of weather. Bullets crack through the rear window and she ducks low, fear finally showing on her face, and he tells her to hold on in a voice that is steady because steadiness is all he has to give. The truck skids off the road and into the scrubland, bouncing over rocks and ruts, cactus scraping the sides like claws. One pursuing car flips in a gully, dust rising like applause, but the second stays close, the driver skilled and determined. She grabs the pistol from the glove box without being asked, checks the chamber with hands that remember something, and when he glances at her in surprise, she says her father taught her to shoot cans off fence posts when she was 10. She leans out the window, hair whipping, and fires 3 shots that hit a tire and send the second car spinning into a mesquite stand. They do not stop to check if anyone is alive. They cannot afford that kind of mercy. When the adrenaline fades, when the truck finally stops in a canyon where the walls rise red and ancient on both sides, they sit in the cab and shake. Not from fear, though fear is part of it, but from the understanding that they have crossed a line and the map does not show how to cross back. She looks at him and he looks at her and something passes between them, something forged in gunfire and choices that cannot be unmade. He opens his mouth to apologize, to explain, to offer something resembling reason, but before words can form, she leans across the space and kisses him. It is not gentle and it is not planned. It tastes like dust and desperation and the furious insistence that if they are going to die for this, they will at least have chosen something that felt like living. When they break apart, breathing hard, she does not apologize and he does not ask her to. They sit in the truck as the sun begins its descent, and the silence between them is no longer uncomfortable but charged, electric, a wire humming with current that could light a city or burn it down. They reach Del Rio as the stars appear, pinpricks of light in a sky so vast it makes every human problem feel small and absurd. The contact lives in a house that sags with age, a veteran who lost a leg at Anzio and learned to walk on spite and stubbornness. He opens the door with a shotgun in one hand and recognition in his eyes, and after a moment he steps aside to let them in. The house smells like coffee and old tobacco, the walls covered in photographs of men who did not make it home. The veteran listens to the story without judgment, his eyes moving between the man he served with and the woman he does not know, piecing together the shape of something he has seen before in different forms. Love and war are cousins, he says finally, both make you stupid and both make you brave, and the trick is surviving long enough to figure out which one you are being at any given moment. He offers them a place to sleep, a meal that tastes like kindness, and a warning: the men from Houston are already asking questions on this side of the border, putting out feelers, and the window for escape is closing faster than expected. She sleeps fitfully on a couch that was old when Eisenhower was young, and he sits in a chair by the window, gun in his lap, watching the street for cars that move too slowly or park too long. The veteran joins him in the vigil, 2 soldiers keeping watch in the language of silence they both speak. "You love her," the veteran says, not as a question but as an observation, and the man does not deny it because denial would be a lie and lies are luxuries he cannot afford. "She is not meant for someone like me," he replies, someone with blood on his hands and ghosts in his past, someone who came to kill her and somehow stayed to protect her instead. The veteran shrugs, adjusting his prosthetic leg. "War taught me that nobody is meant for anything," he says. "We just choose and then we live with the choosing. Or we don't. But the choosing is the only part that is ours." Morning comes too quickly, pale light finding its way through curtains that have given up on darkness, and they prepare to leave for the border crossing with the kind of grim determination that knows the odds but refuses to quit. The plan is simple because complex plans fall apart when bullets start flying. They will cross at a checkpoint the veteran knows, a place where the guards can be reasoned with if the price is right, where documents can be flexible if the story is convincing. But plans are tender things and reality is not. They are a mile from the crossing when a black sedan appears in the rearview mirror, then another, moving with the confidence of men who have stopped pretending. The veteran curses and accelerates, the old truck protesting, and she grips the dashboard as if holding tight can change what is coming. The border is close, so close, but close is not the same as safe. Gunfire erupts, and the veteran's truck takes rounds in the bed, metal screaming. He tells them to get down, to hold on, and he drives like a man who has outrun death before and is not ready to meet it on someone else's terms. The checkpoint looms ahead, the gates, the guards, the thin line between one country and another, and the pursuing sedans close the distance with the inevitability of a closing fist. What happens next is chaos written in smoke and sound. The veteran's truck crashes through the checkpoint barrier, guards scattering, and the pursuing sedans screech to a halt as international law suddenly becomes inconvenient. She and the man stumble out of the truck on the Mexican side, bleeding from cuts that are not deep but feel significant, and the veteran waves them away with a grin that has seen worse. "Go," he yells, "I will talk to these gentlemen about their manners." Shots are fired but they are warning shots, the kind meant to discourage rather than kill, and she and the man run into the warren of streets on the far side of the border where the smell of frying food and the sound of radios spilling rancheras feel like a different world. They lose themselves in the crowd, 2 more refugees fleeing something that cannot be outrun but can be postponed, and when they finally stop in an alley where laundry hangs like flags of surrender, they collapse against a wall and laugh because crying would be the same thing and laughing is what people do when the alternative is unbearable. A widow in Acuna takes pity on them or maybe takes their money, it is hard to tell and does not matter. She gives them a room above a shop that sells holy candles and milagros, tiny metal offerings shaped like hearts and limbs and prayers. They wash the blood and dust from their skin and for the first time in days, they are clean and quiet and alone in a way that is not about running. She sits on the edge of the narrow bed and he sits beside her, and the space between them is smaller than it has ever been. They talk about what comes next, about her sister who needs her, about his life that is no longer a life because the men he worked for do not forgive and do not forget. She says they can send money to the hospital, anonymous, enough to cover months of treatment. He says he will find work, honest work, the kind that does not require him to look over his shoulder every time a door opens. These are hopeful lies and they both know it, but hope is what people cling to when the truth is too heavy. When she leans her head on his shoulder, when he wraps an arm around her and pulls her close, it is not passion but something deeper, the quiet recognition that they have found each other in the wreckage and maybe that is enough. Days become weeks and weeks become a routine that almost feels like living. He finds work at a stable on the edge of town, mucking stalls and mending fences, his hands remembering how to do things that build instead of destroy. She sings in a cantina that is smaller and kinder than the one in San Antonio, and the patrons here do not grab, they listen. The money is not much but it is clean, and they send half of it north through channels that ask no questions, envelopes that disappear into the postal system and reappear at a hospital where a girl with tuberculosis receives care from donors she will never know. At night, they return to the room above the candle shop and make meals from beans and tortillas and hope, and sometimes they talk about the future as if it is a place they might actually reach. He teaches her to play cards and she teaches him the words to songs in Spanish that speak of love that is forbidden and beautiful and doomed, and they both understand the irony but sing anyway because irony is not the same as untruth. News reaches them through the grapevine of whispers that connects all border towns. The men from Houston have not given up but they have moved on to other contracts, other targets, the way predators do when prey proves too costly to chase. The veteran sends word that he is fine, that the guards at the checkpoint pretended to believe his story, that no one died and no one got arrested and that is the best outcome anyone could have hoped for. She receives a letter from her sister's nurse, unsigned and brief, saying only that the girl is responding to treatment, that her lungs are clearing, that she asks about her older sister every day. The letter does not say how the nurse knew where to send it, does not say who is paying for the treatment now that the unsigned envelopes have stopped, and she understands that there are kindnesses in this world that do not announce themselves, that grace moves in the margins where ledgers do not reach. She folds the letter carefully and places it in a box where she keeps the few things that matter, and she allows herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, the running is over. The ending does not arrive with trumpets or declarations. It comes quietly, on a Tuesday evening when the light slants golden through the window of the room above the shop, when he is shuffling cards and she is humming a melody she has not yet written words for. He asks her what she is thinking and she says she is thinking about time, about how some moments feel like lifetimes and some lifetimes feel like moments, about how strange it is that a contract to kill her brought them here, to this room, to this fragile piece that might not last but is real for now. He sets down the cards and takes her hand, rough palm against soft skin, and he tells her what he has not been able to say because saying it makes it true and truth is dangerous. He tells her that he loves her, not in spite of the circumstances but because of them, because she is the first thing in years that has made him want to live instead of just survive. She does not answer with words. She kisses him as the candles in the shop below send their smoke prayers upward, and the world outside continues to spin with all its violence and hunger and injustice, but here in this room, two people who were not supposed to meet, who were not supposed to survive, hold each other as if holding tight enough can stop time, can make the forbidden permissible, can turn a story that began with death into one that insists, against all odds, on life.